talk about some generational can't miss prospects. Let's take them one at a time. First of all, the generational tag, and this is talked about a lot in sports media as foolish, but it's also thrown around a lot in sports media. Here's it's a nondescript thing. So that's why I think it's used so differently. It means a different thing to different people. For me personally, when you're going to call a guy a generational prospect, I'm going to need there to not be another generational prospect at that position for another generation. Like, can we do a decade at least? Like, if Trevor Lawrence was a generational quarterback prospect in 2021 or whenever it was, there needs to not be another. We can't be talking about Caleb Williams as a generational prospect 4 years, 3 years later.
We can't be talking about Caleb Williams as a generational prospect in like the same generation as Andrew Luck. And I still think we're in the same generation. Like, if Andrew Luck was the prospect, that's it. He was the prospect.
Yes.
You know,
it's 100%. So I think the generational thing is dumb and everybody recognizes that. The thing that I think less people recognize and is used more flippantly, and it bothers me just as much, is the idea of a can't miss prospect. And you're seeing this talked about a lot in the Titans scope of the draft right now, which is why I think it'll lend to some interesting conversation. A lot of talk, like you mentioned earlier, Sam, about potentially trading back. And the Titans are objectively in a position where they could be a prime trade back candidate because of the point at which they are in the team building cycle, you know, what they need on their team, which is a lot of things, where they are in the draft, which is a valuable position. All of those things make them on paper a trade back candidate. And the pushback from a lot of folks that are very anti-trade back is, man, you're at 7. You've got to come away with a blue chip, can't miss talent in Malik Neighbors or Roma Dunze or Joe Alt or Olu Fashanu or Brock Bowers. One of these guys that is going to be there at 7. You got to get a can't miss guy instead of taking a risk on a guy later in the draft. And what bothers me so much about this is the people's misunderstanding of the draft. Here's the reality. The NFL draft is a game of probabilities, right? It is all a math exercise at the end of the day, not to analytics pill everything, but really this is what the draft is. The closest you get in the draft to a can't miss guy is a guy that is as close to a can't miss prospect as you can get, right? It is the Bijan Robinson last year. It's the Peter Skoronski last year. This year, guys like Caleb Williams and Brock Bowers are talked about in that way. It's these guys that are the top of their position group in that draft, one of the best at their position we've seen in a while. And those are the top blue chipper guys. Now, we've seen those guys over and over and over come in and get drafted and go to a bad team, and they end up sucking. They weren't can't miss. In fact, they did miss, right? And so while a guy at the top 10 of the draft might be a 90% outcome, this guy's going to work for you, there still exists that 10% chance that it just does not work out. And so the idea that you can't move down from the 7th position for the Titans because you can't take the risk of a 60% guy at 14 or whatever it is and get more capital is just really foolish and a misunderstanding of the way that the draft works to me, because you aren't guaranteed anything at 7, just like you aren't guaranteed anything at further on in the first round.
Yeah, I mean, there's no such thing as a true guarantee, even number 1 overall with the best prospect in the draft, and everybody's on the same page.
Bryce Young.
There's no true guarantee, right? That is just a reality of life. Nothing is guaranteed. Patrick Mahomes is not guaranteed to make the playoffs ever again in his career. 99.9, but you can't foresee the future and guarantee anything. My issue with can't miss is just, I think we misdefine can't miss, or we've allowed it to get like kind of diluted in what it should mean.
Okay.
Can't miss is a phrase that I think is actually useful to describe a high floor player, a high floor prospect, where we're not saying he's going to be awesome. We're just saying he's going to be impactful at some level, because I think NFL fans have a wrong perception of the draft, and they don't necessarily realize just how many first round picks literally don't do anything.
It's half of them. It is the first round historically is a 50-50 proposition.
Yeah. And so it's crazy. Like I'm sitting here watching a Super Bowl commercial that has Solomon Thomas in it. And I'm like, this is a wildly talented defensive end that went 3rd overall in the NFL draft and had buzz to go number 1 that just has been on 4 teams and doesn't do anything. And that happens so frequently that when you say can't miss, to me, you're saying you're not getting that guy. You're not getting Alex Leatherwood at left tackle. tackle, you're getting a starter for the first 2 years of his career, at maybe a swing tackle the next couple of years, but he's going to be on your team and be a player that plays in football games. And if you hit on the pick, he gets a second contract. And but if Joe Alt, let's just use that example.
Sure.
So I disagree with you in the trade down. I think the drop off from Joe Alt to those next tackles is significant. And so if
I'm not saying it's not, I'm just saying the idea that you can't miss on the guys at the top.
No, and you are playing probabilities if you are a team in that spot. But if Joe Alt was truly the franchise left tackle for 10 years that Titans media or national media is portraying him to be right now, he'd probably go first overall. Newsflash, because that's a really valuable position. And like
there aren't a lot of
left tackles floating around, like awesome. All-pro left tackle that is like locked up on a rookie deal. That guy wouldn't be going 7th overall to the Tennessee Titans. He's a high floor prospect in my eyes, who I think is the surest bet of any offensive lineman in this class to be productive at the NFL level and have an impact on the Titans immediately. Does that mean he's their left tackle 5 years from now? I don't know, even if they take him. And so I don't hate the phrase can't miss. I just think we need to be able to like correctly quantify what we mean when we're saying it. We're not saying, at least I'm not saying, a lot of people unfortunately are saying that this person is going to be a consistent Pro Bowler that is just like an awesome player at this position forever. Those prospects don't exist. I'm sorry.
Right. I love that that's the way that you frame it, because I think the most recent Titans first round pick, Peter Skoronski, is a perfect example of this. He was talked about in both of those ways, right? You heard some folks talk about, hey, Peter Skoronski, wherever he goes, he has first year all-pro potential. That's one way that he was talked about. The other is this guy's a can't miss prospect. And folks were talking about him in that way, the way that you are defining can't miss, this idea that, hey, he's going to come in and at a bare minimum, he's going to be a starter. And that is ultimately what he was, right? Did he have a phenomenal first year? No, he did not. Was he clearly and obviously in his first year as an NFL lineman, a starting NFL lineman? Yes, he was. And that was what the can't miss floor was. And so a lot of folks in retrospect in Nashville media and on certain radio programs have been very critical of Peter Skoronski, and they point back to, I thought he was supposed to be a can't miss prospect.
You took him at 11.
Right. You are telling on yourself to me when you are pointing back and saying, I thought he was a can't miss prospect, and then he had his first year like that. You're telling me that your definition of can't miss isn't very accurate.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think it's a really, really important distinction of like, again, it's just like slow down and ask yourself another question. If this player is that definition, why are they available at 11? Because there is a reality to some of this where it's like, if every NFL team believed this guy was definitely going to do this thing.
How many stud left tackles are in the league? I think it's less than the number of stud quarterbacks are in the league. It would be a more if you could find a guy that was for sure a starting left tackle and was one of the best guys, he would be more valuable than Caleb Williams and Drake May in this class.
And I don't think the expectation for the Titans or any other franchise all the time is, hey, can we find a star left tackle? I think you're just trying to find competent and consistently competent.
Yes.
But consistently competent is pretty damn good when you look at the trade-off of what you've had recently and what other teams around the NFL have struggled to produce is consistently competent offensive line play. I think at quarterback, the reason that we see quarterbacks continue to go at the top of draft classes, even when they're not deserving, and why I agree with Easton that somebody's taken JJ McCarthy in the top 15, is because you're always looking to a flaw, like I said, the Patrick Mahomes. You are striving for something higher.
You're hunting the ceiling. You're hunting the ceiling.
Yes. You are hunting a ceiling and striving for more than competent. I think on offensive line, teams are more frequently okay with a floor and just knowing that it's not going to be a detriment to their team.